Hi, I'm C. Tiffany Lee, and I'm the photo editor for People at Meredith Premium Publishing, and also proudly co-chair of BLACKPRINT here at Meredith. Representative of the Black voice at Meredith, BLACKPRINT aims to connect, empower, and celebrate the notable contributions of Black people in the world of media and entertainment and for the culture. BLACKPRINT fosters an environment, BLACKPRINT fosters an environment what's my place of inclusivity and community through diverse storytelling, engaging events, mentorship, partnership, and collaboration. Welcome to Black Prince in Conversation with. Today, we're talking to two parents who've lost their children to police brutality. Our moderator today is Chris Colbert. Chris is the CEO and founder of DCP Entertainment, a media platform of underrepresented voices. Having worked with names like Jamie Foxx, Joy Ann Reid, People, Cricket Media, and more, Chris specializes in documentaries, media partnerships, and content development. Say Their Name is a new podcast that is a bold series that takes an in-depth look into the stories of Black people killed by police from the perspectives of their families. Say Their Name podcast is available on all podcast platforms and is also in Apple Podcasts' new and noteworthy section. Let's welcome Chris.
Thank you for having me. Sorry, that video button got stuck.
Thanks, Chris. John Crawford Jr.'s only son, John Crawford III, was shot and killed in Beaver Creek, Ohio, in a Beaver Creek, Ohio Walmart on August the 5th, 2014. He was purchasing a BB gun that was for sale in the store. He was on the phone with his young children's mother when, per Officer Williams' account, he yelled for Crawford to put his hands up. They were responding to an erroneous call about a Black man waving a gun and pointing it at kids. The video showed this did not occur, yet he was shot and killed. Officer Williams had been cited before using force almost twice more than any other officer on the Beaver Creek police force. He was cleared of any wrongdoing. Crawford leaves behind two kids. He was just 22 years old. His father, John Crawford Jr., continues to keep his son's name alive as he fights to prevent other families from experiencing a similar tragedy and is working with Congress to enact comprehensive laws that create real accountability. Let's welcome John Crawford Jr., everyone. Okay. Hey, how are you?
I'm well, all things considered. What about yourself?
In the early morning hours of November the 25th, 2006, a mother was jolted out of her sleep by a phone call bearing the news that her son was in the hospital. Hours later, she would be forced to embrace the cruel reality of the circumstances surrounding his untimely death. Her son, Sean Bell, was killed in a hail of 50 shots fired by New York City police officers on his wedding day. He was just 23. On April the 25th, 2008, all three of the police officers indicted were acquitted on all accounts. He left behind two children. His mother, Valerie Bell, became committed in the fight against police brutality, and through her activism, Governor Cuomo signed an executive order appointing an attorney general as special prosecutor for cases involving the deaths of unarmed civilians by law enforcement. Valerie Bell released her first book titled Just 23 in 2016. Let's welcome Ms. Valerie Bell. Welcome. Okay, you want to make sure you unmute Ms. Bell?
Yes. Thank you for having me. How you doing? And welcome my little king of the house.
Okay, so Chris, I'm going to hand this over to you, and I will follow up and come through when we have our Q&A with our audience questions.
Great. Well, thank you, Tiffany. I want to first say thank you to you. Thank you to BLACKPRINT, and also, thank you here to John and Valerie. Before we jump into some of these issues and, the work that you all have been doing, I really want to first start with your children. Sean Bell was about to get married before he was killed, literally the same day. Can you tell us more about your son, Miss Valerie?
Yes, I always start off with to God be the glory for all he has done for me and my family. That's why I'm able to stand and do the work that I do now. Sean Bell, yes, was ready to get married. He met his fiancee in John Adams High School at the age of 16. And when he met her, he always said, "Ma, I want to do the right thing." And I said, "What's that?" "I want to get married." So going through his life, playing baseball, that was his gift that God gave him. At the age of 6, he hit a home run across the tracks at a baseball field. So he continued his baseball gift that God had given him. He went through public school, junior high school, even one semester in college to play baseball. But at his young age, having children, he said, "Ma, I need to take care of my children." So he did one semester at Nassau Community College. Then he stopped college to find different types of jobs. He was a young man who was somebody. All our children we know are somebody, but he was a young man knowing that he had 2 children that he had to take care of. He was a young man with integrity. He was friendly. My sister used to say that he had an old soul because he was the type of young man who just thought he knew everything. So he was ready to do the right thing in his life, especially knowing that he had 2 children to take care of. Right now, his baby, he only had 5 months with her. She is 14 now. His oldest daughter is 17, and she already started college. So, like I said, young men and women are about something. They want to be something, but he was a young man that he just loved life.
Thank you for that. And absolutely, everybody, means something, and everybody was somebody. John, tell us about your son. He had just celebrated his 22nd birthday a week before he was taken away.
You're absolutely correct. And first and foremost, Ms. Bell, I just want to send you my condolences. I'm with you. I'm grieving with you. We all know too well, unfortunately. But yes, you're absolutely right, Chris. John he lived 7 days exactly until his 22nd birthday. And pretty much John was he was gifted in sports and football, different sport. His was football, but all in all, he was pretty much just a typical, in a sense of, just a young adult. He's pretty much kind of your prototypical young man. He was a loving father. He's very protective of his family, very family oriented young man. Yet he left behind 2 children. At the time, John IV was about 16, 17 months, and Jaden was 5 months. And he just aspired to be. I thought he was going to be a meteorologist because he always had it on the Weather Channel. That's how I knew when he was home. Here with me, it was I walk in, he's on the Weather Channel, and he's kind of was a history buff. So he was preparing. Actually, he was getting ready to go to college. He was getting ready to go to my alma mater, Kentucky State. I went to Kentucky State University, and we were preparing him for his collegiate career. And other than that, he was just a loving, kind person, very respectful, a young person, and he was just getting prepared to do his thing, take care of his. And piggybacking off of Miss Bell, that was his thing also. He wanted to do the right thing. He wanted to take care of his boys. And so we prepared him to do that. And he was on his way. And unfortunately, you know the rest of the story in terms of what happened on August 5th.
Thank you for sharing that, and condolences from myself. I'm looking at the chat right now. Many of the people who are listening right now, their condolences I want to pass along to you all. And I appreciate, again, you being here, but also just, what you all have been doing since your sons were senselessly taken away, the fight that you have done, and also literally opening up these scab wounds every time we talk about this. So thank you for providing us all this kind of perspective. I want to first start on the media responsibility when it comes to these cases. You know, in our podcast documentary series, Say Their Name, you know, one of these stories touches on Jamar Burns Hill, also known as Jamar Clark, where, you know, the police came up with this narrative that he was involved in a domestic dispute, and that was kind of their justification for killing him. And then you find out later that that wasn't true. But once that narrative is out there, it's hard to then reverse that and to get people in the community to get behind somebody. So, you know, I want to start with you, Valerie, in terms of how did the media handle Sean's case, and how do you see them handling these kinds of cases?
Well, on that day when it happened, of course, I would think, since the police were the ones who killed our son, they had came to our door to let us know something happened, but they didn't. On that day, Nicole's sister had called me and said that he was in a car accident. So I'm thinking, okay, he was the driver. You know, maybe he had to, you know, a car accident was happening. But when I got to the hospital, of course, all the media was there. They want to interview you. They there, you know, for the moment. And then when everything dies down, they fade away. So it's like, and a lot of politicians want to take photo ops. After all is said and done, they go away. But that's something that you have to continue to fight for yourself if you have to do it alone. So the media could write stories, tell lies, but I thank you for having this, you know, this podcast to let the people know who our child really was and the life that he lived. So media was around, yes, during the time, but things fade away. But me joining other organizations back in 2014, because I used to, you know, I have two other children. At the time, my daughter was 14 and my oldest son was 27. And, you know, I had to spend time with them, not thinking of anything, working, just keep moving to keep my sanity. So people coming around with media, I really didn't focus on them. I like shunned them out until 2014 is when I came out. My husband was the one who really did all the protests and speaking back then, but I didn't come out to 2014. And that's, you know, from then I do the work that I do now.
But it sounds like it's good that you took time for yourself before you went out there, because it sounds like it was a lot, and you're just still grieving. You're still coming to terms with what just happened. But obviously, yeah, you know, you've very much been out there now, and we appreciate that. How about for you, John?
You know, the media it's really not your friend, as John Cochran used to say all the time. You know, but most of the time they're not your friend. But you have to use them to your advantage if you can. Unfortunately, once upon a time, the media used to, back in the days when Walter Cronkite, you know, they used to actually report the news, you know, without their own personal agenda and everything. They report the news. Now they make the news, unfortunately. When John was killed, within 24 hours, actually within the first 3 hours, they had already framed the narrative of what happened. You know, just that quick. He was shot and killed at 8:26 and 55 seconds. Okay. By 10 o'clock, you know, it was this delusional man coming in Walmart to kill women with, you know, this is what you heard in the local news. And it was already, the story was already out there. So of course we knew that wasn't the case, and we had to combat that. But you really don't have the time to, you know, strategize and get everything together, because we're actually still trying to find out what happened. So we're actually talking to investigators and police after it occurred. So we still don't have the full story, but yet the story is already out there. You know, so unfortunately, you know, the responsibility of the media is supposed to be obviously to inform and, you know, to take that information and to criticize and analyze it and to put it out there. But oftentimes not, especially in these situations. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. They frame the story before you ever get, as the old people say, God gets the news, and then you have to go back and combat it and and set the record straight.
Yeah, I'm sorry you both have had to experience that. And then you obviously have to continue seeing as other unarmed or even,
Right.
Black people continue to be killed in the news, and you see these kind of situations happen again and again. John, what does that do to you?
Oh, I mean, I mean, I don't even have words. It's just so aggravating, and it infuriates you because, but my background, I really feel for the families. As hard as it was for me, I really feel for the families, at least I have a criminal justice background, and you know, this has been my work. You know, this is my this is the background that I chose to make a living off of. So I've been a parole officer, and I've been some of the other things that I understand the criminal justice system a bit better than most of the other families. So at least I kind of know how it works, if you will. I couldn't even imagine what if some of these families that really don't know how this system is, you know, it really infuriates me.
How about for you, Valerie? You're on mute there.
When it constantly happens, it just open up the wounds again. Like so many killings were done this year, which November 25th, which is next weekend. Next week will be 14 years. So when it happens, it's like, oh no, God, here we go again. And we have to keep speaking out to eventually to change the laws. They don't come overnight. Martin Luther King fought for us for so many years, and you know, change. Like when I meet other family members, I try to speak to them, and some comforting words, which is hard to do, but just tell them they have to keep on moving, and God has a purpose and a plan for our lives. It's hard to lose a child because they always say our children should be burying the mother and father. But when something like this happened, like Mr. Crawford said with the news, in my son's case, they said there was a gun, there was a fourth person, they searched the area, and they did not find anything. They said the young man who came out of the club said, I'm going to get a gat. That terminology, you just saying, I'm going to get a gun, following him for no reason. And they did not have a gun. They couldn't find anything. So the news twists and turns things around, and it's a shame. So killings going on now is like, oh my goodness, when is this going to stop? And right now, bills were signed, if you saw it in June, with Governor Cuomo signing the 50-year repeal to investigate officers, just like they investigate other government or city workers when they have misconducts. So we went for that bill, and of course they don't like it, but it's not fair. I believe a lot of misconduct leads up to the killing of a person, and just things have to be changed. Police Stat Act we have, so just going out there and trying to make some changes eventually will help.
Yeah, and we're going to definitely get into some of that change. But I first want to acknowledge that, you guys continue to be re-victimized in these kind of situations, having to see it again and again. But I also think that's something that is lost on a lot of people who see these situations and then see the aftermath in terms of the civil cases that you all fight. And sometimes, I know for Valerie, you didn't get this. John, you guys got this, but the settlements that may happen, they see that money that gets thrown around, but I think it's lost on them what that money goes to, and also what that financial burden is for you leading up to that, situation. Just to draw on a couple of families that we touched on in our series, Robbie Tolan's family, they had to sell their home to be able to fight all the way to the Supreme Court. But let's be honest, not everybody has a home to sell. Keldrick Donald's family, they are still living in the home where the police officer killed their child, and it's a small home. It's in their bathroom. They have to go by that bathroom every single day, and they can't afford to leave that home. So, I'll go to you, Valerie, first. What is that financial burden in terms of the ongoing battle that you face as you're continuing to try to keep your son's name alive and fight to get some kind of justice and to stop this from happening?
Well, of course, everybody knows there was a settlement, and by him having children, of course, the parents don't receive anything. The financial burden is, we did have a community center at one time, and people thought we received the civil lawsuit, and we didn't. So people did not come to help us to keep the community center going. So I look at the financial burden is trying to put something in the community to help the people in the community to make that change also. Thank God, during the time when it happened, I was working, a member of 1199, and they did reach out and they helped me to bury our son. But just to go on day by day, I just try to, keep the faith and not worry about getting so much, because I'm not all about that. I'm about keeping my son's name out there. I'm about speaking the story of the life he lived. So I just take one day at a time, and providing for my family, my grandchildren, because grandchildren will call you when they want something, but when I always provide for them. So and pray for the other ones who have a harder time, that, people will come to them to help them, because losing a child, it's like, it's unbelievable. That's all I have to say. Like Mr. Crawford said, you lost for words. And especially, and I always used to think the way they died is the worst part. It's a hurting feeling, knowing that we're all going to die one day, but it's the way that a young one is taken from you.
And I apologize. I should have led that first by saying, getting some kind of settlement, getting some kind of financial restitution does not bring your child back. So I know that is not
Right.
the first thing that you all want. The first thing you want is, first of all, your child to still be here.
Yes.
So for you, John,
And justice.
I'm sorry. Yes, and absolutely, and justice. And for you, John, you actually did get a settlement, and you actually are still fighting in a civil case at this current time. Tell us about kind of that financial burden for you, and where that money goes.
You faded out on me right there at the end, Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But just to piggyback, that's okay. I'm just going to pick up. I think you were just saying pretty much the same, reiterating the financial burden part of it. Yes, we're still fighting, and we've got a very low ball a settlement for the basically it was for the children. We did settle with Beaver Creek. However, we are still pursuing the Walmart trial, and it should be coming up hopefully next year around February or March or so. But yes, in piggybacking off Miss Bell, it's unfortunate that a lot of these cases got no money, very little compensation for being victimized. And that's unfortunate that we live in a system that doesn't take care of that aspect of it. You kind of have to do your due diligence and get out there and get a good attorney, if you will, for them, and hopefully get one such that they will take the case pretty much on a contingency basis, which simply means they don't get paid unless there is a settlement. But oftentimes or not, you don't have that. And one of the reasons is because of the time constraints. Again, I reiterate the point of the story is being narrated already, and you don't even know it, or you don't realize it, but until it actually hits the 10 o'clock news or the 6 o'clock news, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not what happened. This, that, and other. And then you have to go, it's like you're going backwards. Then you got to say, okay, they're framing the story. We need legal consultation. What's our next step? We need some attorney. We need a lawyer. So while you're fishing for your lawyer, if you will, the story is still going on. Media, they're still making money. They're making money off the hits and people intriguing about, oh, what was that? What happened? At the Walmart, that's how they're making their money. And so yeah, it's a big problem for a lot of the families. I know of several cases that the family got zero to nil, almost $100,000, $10,000. I mean, it's just for a life. It's just ridiculous how we're set up, and that's what I mean. All of that has to change. We need a complete overhaul in everything. Vehicle compensation, yes, you're absolutely right. You can't compensate for a life that's lost, but I tell you what, the infrastructure and the way that things are structured, that's a phase that has to be taken care of. You need to get everything you can out of the deal when your loved one is dead for no reason. I mean, everything, be it a financial, be it anything you can get out of the deal, you need to take it, everything, whole hog. No, you can't bring them back, but they still have children that needs taken care of. You need to be taken care of, this, that, and so we live in a capitalist society. We don't live in an idealistic society. So you need to take care of everything and get everything you can for your child, including number one, justice. Him being here, justice, and then any type of compensatory damages that you possibly can. You need to go after.
No, honestly, well said, and absolutely right. We need to make sure that, first of all, these things are not happening, but second of all, that you all are getting justice and then getting some kind of financial restitution, especially with you all here with these kids that you're trying to help raise, and just so many other factors when it comes to medical bills and financial bills and all that. Valerie, you touched earlier on some of the change that needs to happen. What are some of that police culture change that you feel that needs to take place here?
Everybody used to always say the police need more training, but I feel the police policy needs to be changed. The police officers need to do more psychological therapy during their time of their job. So the changes, like I said, that we did, special prosecutor, and a lot of cases that the special prosecutor is given, for some reason they don't take them. Why? I do not know. It's like they on each other's side. The judges, the police officers on each other's side, the DAs. So that's why we came up with the special prosecutor. So the bills that were signed, we hoping and praying that they will take effect for the Police Act, the 50A repeal. And I know it's another one. Also, Gwen Carr did one with the chokehold. And now they're trying to erase that one, saying new officers that come in, they shouldn't be held accountable for choking somebody. But why are you choking them? You have a stun gun. So a lot of things need to be done with the police department as far as changes in their rules and regulations. The thing that they always hold against a person that they killed, I fear for my life. Why you fear for your life? You're the one with the gun, and the one you're killing doesn't have a gun. So a lot of their rules and regulations need to be changed.
Yeah, that last piece that you touched on, that you're trying to dig into someone's mind state. How do you argue against a mind state? That puts us in a no-win position when they're able to use that qualified immunity. John, how about for yourself? What do you feel that needs to change within the policing culture change?
Well, there's so much. I encourage everyone to Google the Justice of the Policing Act of 2020 and also the John Crawford III law. If you just Google it, it'll come up on change.org, and it's a comprehensive report that details actually that very questions that you asked. But from a fundamental standpoint, Chris, the first and foremost thing's got to change is that you got to have people who actually want to serve. Okay, that they want to serve humanity for the right reasons. They have to have some type of moral and ethical code. And if you don't have a code of ethics or morals, we're all doomed. Because a lot of this what we're witnessing, this has nothing to do. And I'm telling you, I've been in this field for 25 plus years, and I've been around law enforcement virtually all my life, And I'm telling you, what I'm seeing, these killings, so it's ironic that my son died by the hands of law enforcement. But what I'm seeing this has nothing to do with training. These are flat out unadulterated murders, state sanctioned murders. Okay. These are people who want to kill. They have an appetite to kill. Okay. These are not the police of yesteryears where I was growing up. The culture of police has been bad enough, from a historical standpoint. But all in all, we used to police our own communities, and you didn't have, because the interesting thing is that it's white police killing, for the most part, black and brown people, for the most part, not vice versa. Because when we do it, we understand we can't do it. I mean, ask Officer Muhammad Noor, who was sentenced to 12 and a half years. Ask Officer Derek Stafford, who was sentenced to 40 years for a manslaughter charge. 40 years for a manslaughter. Ask Norris Greenwood Jr. Greenhouse, Jr. These were black officers who the situation was very similar to some of our situations, and they received basically death sentences. So, I don't see it from the standpoint necessarily of there needs to be a lot of training. In fact, Officer Sean Williams, the officer who killed my son, they had just had trainings 2 weeks prior to him killing my son. So I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Training is always great, because you have to you have to keep up, and you have to continue to be motivated, and continue to change with the times and evolve and all of that good stuff. And that's fine. I have no problem with that. All I'm simply saying is what we're witnessing, for the most part, has absolutely nothing to do with training, but flat out hate, and flat out with the sense of they know that they can, for the most part, get away with it.
I think both of you touched on also some of the laws that need to change. And then both of you all are doing continuous work, really trying to fight, enact laws, whether it be locally, nationally. But just to wrap up here before we get to some Q&A, Valerie, what are some of the things that you're doing to keep Sean's name alive, and also to fight to help make changes for families who may find themselves in these situations, and to prevent families from finding themselves in these situations, and also touch on some of the types of people that you're working with to be able to do that?
Well, the main thing I'm doing now to keep Sean's name alive is your podcast, and people who call me to go to events talking about his life that he was living when he was alive. And I also was with an organization called Justice Committee and CPR in New York, where I, during the time from 2014 up to 2019, went out to Albany to speak to the politicians, going to City Hall to speak to the mayor, the governor, just to make these changes. Like I also spoke about the 50A repeal, the Police Stat Act, the no chokehold. So just going out there to try to make the changes in the law. And what, just to piggyback on what Mr. Crawford said in reference to the training and the mindset of these police officers, is like you said, do they really want to serve? My husband always says that the men in blue are like the Ku Klux Klan. And it's a shame to feel that way, but that's what's happening, and that's what you're seeing, because they're killing so many young Black men for no reason. So me being out there to speak about my son, and I don't really like to talk about the 50 shots because you can read about it, and there could be some things that they stated wrong. I like to talk about the life that Sean Bell lived when he was living, and what he would have been if he was alive. He was going to be an electrician, also I didn't speak about, and also had a gift to play baseball. So he loved to do those things. So my thing is just keeping his name out there. And I thank you so much, Chris Colbert, for having this podcast on talking about our sons.
Thank you. I appreciate you for saying that, but I wish we didn't have to have this podcast, to be completely
That's
honest
true.
with you.
That's true.
John, how about you?
Well, one of the major things I'm doing, other than I go around. I was flying around the country, speaking on panels and working with these families, and we still work together. We still do panels together. Mike Brown Sr. and I, and Myrtilla, Alton Sterling's relatives. We were just in Memphis in the first quarter part of the year, doing the panel there before this big pandemic thing came abroad. So I still talk to the families. I still call them. I still check on them. We still, try to stay in contact with each other. But I've been working on these proposals for legislation. The John Crawford III law, and it's pretty much, there's a lot of congruency with that in the Justice of Policing Act. That is my thing now, strictly proposals, trying to get through legislation, because my whole thing with the whole ordeal is that I want some solutions, and the only solutions I see is, frankly, sanctions. So my whole platform is dealing with sanctions, because if there are no sanctions, it doesn't matter. All of this, what we're talking about, what we're doing is in vain, because I know firsthand what's going on, and I know what can stop it or slow it down to a bare minimum, where you'll think for the most part it stops. And it's going to start with them feeling some pressure that, hey, if I go out here and commit a murder, because basically that's what we're witnessing. I mean, let's make no mistakes about it. I'm going to be held accountable to the full extent of the law, just as a civilian would. If you go out there, Chris, and you commit a murder, they're going to hold you accountable. Okay. Why is it that in policing, it's one of the few occupations that they don't hold them accountable? And it's simply because of who and what they represent. They're agents of the court. Okay. If you look up the word policing, the etymology of the word is policy. Okay. They protect policy. Okay, everybody, yeah, they're supposed to protect you. Ideally, yes, they protect and serve. They're supposed to be civil servants and the whole 9 yards with that. But if you look up the root causes of all this, I encourage people to kind of do your due diligence a little bit on a lot of these terms, and it's pretty clear. That's the reason why we don't have the conviction rate, if you will, with policing versus any other occupation. They're very, very well protected. With the ambiguity in the language, as Ms. Bell mentioned earlier, I fear for my life, and the presumption of fear and all. These are the reasons these terms are within the context. It's to protect them. So I'm just at the point, and I've been at the point. I'm just an honest person. I'm gonna continue to be honest. I'm gonna tell you like it is. Yes, it can be reformed, but that reformation would come in the terms of sanctions. We have enough of the law. It's pretty clear, the Fourth Amendment, about not engaging in lethal force unless there's imminent risk or danger. We have enough of that already in place that they should be indicted, prosecuted, and convicted on these charges. What's happening is you have people, prosecutors, special prosecutors. We had a special prosecutor, but the special prosecutor happened to work for Mike DeWine, who's now the governor, and he was the attorney general at the time, but he still worked for him. So it didn't matter that he went to Hamilton County versus Greene County, where my son was killed, and got a special prosecutor. They all lied together oftentimes. So it's all the same network. So the bottom line, if you don't have people doing their jobs and doing it correctly, then there should be sanctions for that. If you're not going to sanction that, they're going to continue. It's business as usual. We're going to continue to, like I said it 6 years ago, I'll continue to say it. We're going to continue to see the killings. Okay, for the most part, there won't be many convictions, and it's going to be a perpetual thing. So that's what I'm working on. I'm still working on the legislation that hopefully to try to diversify this thing, and we can get some sanctions implemented into these policies. And that will help us tremendously with limiting a lot of these cases.
Honestly, thank you both. I know we said it in the beginning, but condolences again. And thank you for continuing this fight that you're doing, because clearly you all have taken this beyond your own children and are trying to positively affect other families and keep other families from having to go through this. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to kick it back over to Tiffany here for the Q&A, but I just, again, wanted to say thank you for giving us this time and bearing your souls for everybody to learn.
Great. Thank you so much. So let's get to
Thank you, Chris.
these
Bless you for it, brother.
In the chat. And if anybody has any questions, put them in the chat and we'll try to get through as many as we can. The first one is, why do you think young Black men are so feared by some police officers?
Okay, go ahead, John Crawford.
You can go ahead. Go on, Ms. Bell.
Oh, no, I'm saying they're feared by so many police officers because what's been going on. Because a lot of Black young men and women being killed by police officers. So that's why they fear. And it's a shame for them to feel that way. Because like Crawford said, back in our time growing up, we police our own communities. My husband used to say if he got in trouble and there was a police officer who called him to the side, and he would say, no, don't take me home. I'd rather go with you, because they were afraid of your parents. So a lot of things starts in the family, but it's a shame that we're fearing now the police officers, and because of all the killings that's been happening.
Do you think do you see that changing, Mr. Crawford? How do you really feel like relations between the police officers and the Black community is something that's tangible in your time?
No, unfortunately, it's not changing, and it's not going to change on a wide scale. I think it's not going to change until they receive some type of held accountability and receive some type of sanctions for their actions. Right now, I just don't see that change at all, and it's evident. They're still killing us. Even after the world saw George Floyd get killed and choked out.
Mhm.
Dave Chappelle still talks about my son's case. He's in a Walmart. Should be the safest place in the United States of America. However, he didn't come out alive, okay, off of a bogus phone call. So no, I don't, candidly, I just don't see it changing until we put something into place to hold their feet to the fire.
And just to piggyback off of John, just real quick, in terms of the sanction piece, I think that's lost on some people in terms of when people do get settlements, that money is coming out of taxpayers' money. This money should be coming from the police. They're not getting hit in their pockets. And so there's no reason for them to change yet.
That's true. I want to ask you some questions about how you deal with something like this, and I just want to know how do you survive mentally and emotionally, when so much is going on, especially this past summer. How do you maintain? And I know both of you are both taking care of grandbabies, but how do you handle these sort of things that are going on and re-triggering and the traumas that happen?
Well, I maintain because I'm a firm believer of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That's how I maintain having my family around, especially my grandchildren, just keeping myself busy. That's how I maintain to have my sanity. Because I've always used to say, if I didn't go out the time to be before people to speak about our son, I would have probably lost my mind. But maintaining is believing in the Lord, is having faith, having my family, my church family, just people that I know to talk to me. And like I said, I don't speak about the 50 shots. I speak about the life that our son lived. And being this time of the year, it gets hard, but I think about the things that he did when he was alive and the things that he would have done if he was alive. That brings a smile to my face. And seeing his two daughters, and thank God he was able to leave us two daughters. The things that they say and do reminds me of Sean, especially the food that they love during Thanksgiving time, the sweet potato pie, the mac and cheese. So those were his favorite foods, and those are their favorite foods. So maintaining is thank God for his children and our family.
Mr. Crawford, did you want to add on anything on that?
I'm just piggybacking off of Miss Bell. She's absolutely right. That's the same thing I do. I have both of his children, my grandchildren. I've had them ever since they were 5 months and a year and a half, and they keep me going, and they remind me so much of him at different stages of his life. And then we all have a higher power. The Most High and the Universal Mother have kept me sane, at least a little bit. I hope, to do what we're doing, and to keep his namesake carried. And you just have to, as he indicated, stay busy, stay focused. Continue to pray to the higher power, whatever power that is you believe in, that as long as it's positive and pro-life. And you just keep moving. It's nothing, at least for me, when they ask me, it's nothing that you're going to get over. You'll never get over it. You just learn, frankly, to deal with it,
right.
And try to deal with it proactively. And that's what works for me. And it sounds like that's what's working for Ms. Bell as well.
So with that, how do you feel about the way that social media is now, and how it's such a major part of these tragedies that are happening right now? Do you think that it's helpful for situations that things are viewed the way that they are and they're being shared and seen, or is it something that you think works against, the advocacy that you believe in with trying to make change, in these situations? Because it's hard to see. A lot of times, like you said, we can't look at it anymore. It's traumatic for people who haven't even experienced something as personal as what you two have had to deal with. Just being, a viewer, it's tough enough. But I wanted to know if you thought, well, at least they got it on film, and we could do something about it. It floods society, and it makes it difficult, for people.
Even though they have it on film, it still doesn't do any good for it, because you see it clear as day, like the officer choking someone. I always said back in the time when there was 50 shots, bullets flying everywhere, there was no video, but they have the video. They had the video of Eric Garner. Where did it go? Nowhere. They had the video of George Floyd. Where did it go? Nowhere. And you see it clear as day. What do you do not see? It's unbelievable. I'm not all into that social media, I guess because of my age, but the young people are. But it doesn't even pay to use it because they don't use that against the police officers. I mean, those are the cases that I've seen. It could be other cases that they did use against the police officers, but social media is the norm thing that they're doing now, because look what we're doing now. We're on Zoom
Right.
because we can't, meet in person that often. But I don't.
Well, I'm sorry, Ms. Bell. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm finished. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay. I think, and clearly, I feel you, Ms. Bell. I understand your point. And to my point earlier, that's I told you why nothing is really happening with the conviction rates on cops but I'm glad that the platforms are there, frankly. I think about Walter Scott case, okay, in South Carolina when he got shot in the back.
Right.
They also emptied the clip in him, and unbeknownst to him, he was being filmed across the street. That cop was indicted and charged. So if we can get one, if you can save one, it's worth saving. So to what effect it'll have, I think it's good that the platforms are out there, because eventually what I'm hoping is that things will evolve. As change is inevitable, be it for the better or worse. Things will change. We're getting older. I'm looking at all this gray right now in my hair. So with or without our approval, things will change. So it's my hope that social media and the platforms are being continue to be utilized in that manner. Film it, show it. Because when you have irrefutable proof, even though they're getting off, they're getting off, but not all of them are getting off. And I would take 3 to 5% conviction rate over 0% conviction rate. But one day, this proof that we have, we can use it in these platforms. We can use it to induct, to start, to implement writings, and to hopefully that would transfer into legislation, and hopefully that would transfer into higher conviction rates, and it would kind of feed off of each other. And if you didn't have, because I mean, let's face it, let's be honest, these things have always taken place. They just weren't filmed as much. And it was over 200 cameras on my son. He was in a Walmart, over 200. And seemingly we didn't get a whole lot out of the deal.
Right.
But we will get something out of the deal before it's all over. And like I said, Walter Scott case, he got something out of the deal. You had Oscar Grant's case, he got something out of the deal. So there are some cases out there where the social media and just the audience, the presence of people were there, and it was served as proof positive. Hey, this is what happened. Rodney King even got something out of the deal, a little bit, not as much as we wanted, but I would much rather have him present than not at all, just for that reason.
Okay. So very quickly before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you both quickly to just mention any organizations that you support or are part of that are also fighting to help to create change. We'll start with you, Ms. Bell, first.
Like I said, I worked with Justice Committee. You can Google it, justicecommittee.org. They're an organization that helps families against police violence, and also CPR, which is Community Police Reform, that I've worked with for, like I said, about 6 years. So like I said, you could Google them and see what the organization is all about. It's about police reform. And right now, a film will be coming out about Sean's life. I don't know, probably, hopefully next year, it'll be coming out. And that will tell you, a lot of things that he used to be when he was living. And that's about it for now.
And Mr. Crawford?
I'm pretty much freelance. I kind of work with anybody and everybody who calls me, and that's a lot of people. If I've worked with some of the names I never heard of. It's just if it's about the cause, and I feel that they're passionate and about the cause. I work with them. In fact, that's how Chris and that's how I met. It was all about a call. And here we are right today. Obviously, Black Lives Matter, and I've been all over the states. Dealing with them, but it doesn't. I don't have a particular or specific organization that I work with. My son's website that's under construction right now is the John Crawford Foundation.org. That's what his website is about. It's about me basically philanthropying, being with these families, sharing my little bit of knowledge and experience about this topic with families so they can have a better understanding as to what goes on behind the scene and how this thing we call criminal justice really works and how it doesn't work.
Thank you. And Chris, I just want you to tell our listeners about the podcast. And I think we have it in the chat about how people can make donations, to the Say Their Name cause. So why don't you just quick chat about that and where they can find the podcast before we wrap up?
Sure. Yeah. So the podcast is called Say Their Name. It's on every podcast hosting platform. You can also go to dcpofficial.com. And you can get the series there. You can listen to it there or go to any platform from that. And the great thing about how we've done this is every story that we're highlighting, we have an individual page around that person. So we have the petitions you can sign. We have the resources that are mentioned. And we also do have our crowdfunding, as you had just mentioned. I believe someone put it in the link as well. But if you go to dcpofficial.com, you can get all that information there. And just to kind of sum up what the series is, it's kind of a two-part series where we first memorialize and highlight who these individuals were. That is first and foremost to what we are trying to do. We want to leave this lasting impact of who they were and who they could have been if their life wasn't senselessly taken away. And then the second piece is, what is that ongoing battle, as has been touched on here by Valerie and John? What happens when the hashtags stop, the media attention, social media attention shifts focus in this quick moving news cycle? What is that ongoing battle that these families face? And so that's what we really try to encompass within this. And we use the families as our tour guide. We are very biased in our approach. We want to hear directly from the families, from the people that they want us to speak on behalf of them and their battle and their loved one. And so we basically hand our microphone over to these families. And so we're just the conduit for their stories. So, I'd love for you to check out the series. And even if you don't listen, please donate, because 100% of our proceeds are going directly to these families.
Okay. And they can find your podcast?
So you can find it on all platforms. Right now, as you had mentioned at the beginning of this, we are in the new and noteworthy section of Apple. And if you go to dcpofficial.com, you can get the different links there, but it's on Pandora, Spotify, Stitcher, all those places that podcasts are found.
Great. Well, I want to thank all of you for really taking the time out to come and to talk to the Meredith community and beyond about this. We promise that we will continue to say their name and we will honor them. And we love you all as a community. And I just want to thank you and thank God for you. Thank you, Ms. Bell. Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Chris, thank you so much for doing this. I want everybody to remember to follow BLACKPRINT Meredith on Instagram. And have a great evening and have a wonderful holiday season.
Same here. Thank you so much for having me, and thinking of Sean Bell. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bless you. God bless you. All right.